Today here on Off the Fields, I'm so excited to introduce a trailblazer recently named to Ebony's Power 100 as a sports leader and featured in Essence as one of sports' most powerful women. Welcome, Miss Kendra Bulluck-Major, the Executive Director for the Orange Blossom Classic. I am so thrilled to be sharing this moment with you.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that we could finally make this happen. But the accolades, when you hear that, how does that make you feel? Being Ebony's Power 100 and then being featured as Essence, one of sports' most powerful women.
Yeah, it makes me feel good,
Okay.
but sometimes I'm still just trying to embrace it all, because in all honesty, those aren't the things that you set out to do. It really just comes down to wanting to put a good product on the field, wanting to make a difference in the community.
Right.
And then when those things happen, it's like, oh, wow, me,
Yes.
because I'm in the trenches of it, but it's definitely an honor. It's an honor.
Yes, and that's something as Black women, we have to start embracing that more.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
exactly.
Because we tend to do that.
Yes,
when we're thriving.
You're right.
So Kendra, let's start with your roots, right? Where are you originally from and what was it like growing up in that environment?
So I am originally from North Carolina, Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I loved it, and I still do. I go back, I haven't been there probably in a little over a year, but I try to get back to visit as often as I can.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. It is, for me, that's home, originally home. And I'm a Florida girl, Miami girl, but Rocky Mount's always home.
Right.
And I think that was where my first introduction into HBCUs really came from. The state of North Carolina has so many HBCUs.
They do.
And so, it was always about the rivalries. We used to have what we call the Battle of the I-40, which was between A&T and North Carolina Central. And then, you've got Winston-Salem State, and you have, Shaw University. And then there was always those battles between that area and the DMV area. So, North Carolina, if Central was playing Virginia State, or, there's always some sort of rivalry going on. And that was really where I got my introduction of HBCUs from.
And so I know that you said your family, everybody went to FAMU, but you went to FIU.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So what drew you to FIU, but then you went back to HBCUs, right?
So I'm spoiled. I stayed home.
Okay.
So I was like, wait, so my older sister, she gets how much? They get how much every month? That's how much you send there? Okay, no, I'm going to stay home and be spoiled.
Right.
So yeah, that's what happened. But like I said, that was one of those makeups with my dad. Like, well, okay, hey, I'm going to just bring them, because I was in the band in high school. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to go and be in the Marching 100. So I'm just going to bring the Marching 100 to you.
Yes.
And that's how I stay in the family.
I love that because, as far as an athletic background, did you play any sports? You didn't at all? Okay.
No.
But you're a boy mom.
Yes.
And your boys play?
Yes. So I have, my oldest one is at FAM now playing football. And he's played football since he was 4 years old.
Okay.
And then my youngest one is a basketball. He plays basketball. So he keeps me with the indoor sports. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because being down here, we're outdoors. Football is big down here.
Yes. And especially youth football. So with my youngest one, that was one of those things. My oldest one, you're on the park every single
Weekend,
day.
yes.
Monday through Friday for practice, and then all day Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah.
All day event. Now, who did he play Little League for? Just
Oh boy!
Out of curiosity,
he played in Miami Gardens for Carroll City Chiefs, and then before that, he played for the Ravens. So he was the Ravens and the Chiefs, which is a big rivalry as well from youth sports.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of rivalries going on right now today, actually.
Yes.
But yeah, Miami Gardens Ravens is a pretty prominent youth football team down here. The whole program, and I had to learn that myself. I was like, wow, okay,
it's huge.
I was only really based in Fort Lauderdale and Broward, but Lauderdale Lakes Vikings, and so
and then they have so Miami Gardens has Scott Lake Vikings.
Okay,
that's a part of FL.
a lot of talented football players are developed right down here in South Florida, and it starts with the youth football.
It does.
You know,
it does, yes.
So having your boys in it, you're a boy mom. You know, you don't have to have play sports, but you're in there.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
that was how I always watched football, but having to really learn football came from my son. I remember telling a friend of mine one day who would come to one of his games, I was like, hey, tell me something good that he did on the field so we'll have something to talk about in the car.
Right.
And so he tells me something, and we get in the car, and I'm talking to my son, and my son goes, that wasn't me, that was number such and such. I was like, you know what? You got to learn this for yourself, because like, you can't use somebody else's information. So that was, like, okay, mommy's going to pay attention. I'm going to know everything. And that was really how I was able to just really get into the sport and start dissecting it. Basketball was fairly easy to follow.
Right.
So my youngest one, I always say there's that one hit that determines if you're going to be a football player or a basketball player. So he started off with football, and he got that one hit, and he's like, I think I'm going to switch to basketball.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. But what's also important is like more Black moms, when they're boy moms and their kids are playing in sports, specifically football, we have more women who are taking on that momager role, okay? Yep. They're making these big time decisions when it comes to contracts. That's right. Making sure their babies get top dollar because they know what they're really worth.
Who's going to fight for you other than like your mom, right? Nobody's going to fight for you like your mom.
Yeah, and I think people forget that Michael Jordan's mom was the one who really made deals for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson too, right?
Yeah.
So recently with his mom, when he said, no, I want to play quarterback. Yeah.
Yes, but I could see you doing that same thing at some point.
He really, like we do. We have, as your kids get older, your relationships are always different. So, my conversations now with my son in college, of course, we're talking about what's next, right? But we're talking, we've had those conversations about where do you want to go to school? What does it look like from a recruit? Thank God he was able to go to where he always wanted to, was FAMU, Tallahassee, but he would always say like, Mommy, I'm going to be the kid that's going to turn down like, all of these PWIs, and I'm going to say, no, I'm going to this HBCU. So it was just instilled in him. But, we have those type of conversations. We have conversations about NIL. We have conversations, he'll call me, and ask me things that you would think that a guy wouldn't even call his mom and ask about. Yeah. Wow. And to the point where now my oldest is able to say to my youngest, like, hey, talk to mom, because to teenagers at a certain, it's like, no, mom knows nothing. So now my oldest is like, no, like, talk to mom.
He's vouching for you. Yeah.
So he goes off to practice, and I'm like, hey, make sure you take your protein after, and make sure you do this and do that, and so we everything from nutrition to body language and playing time and how those things work. We were able to have those conversations,
and that's awesome because you got to have that open communication. Between you and your mom, and as a Black mother, like, your children have to take all that into account. You can't forget that, we are still considered the minority.
Exactly.
So, even though we dominate in everything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But no, there is nothing, I think, better than a mom who is going to have your best interests at heart and who's going to manage you the right way. I mean, a mom is going to, I don't know of any mom that can be bought, right? Everybody has a price. You go in there and you're negotiating and representing for your son. Chances are there not going to be any backdoor deals. There not going to be any, well, just name your price. And this is 100% what is in the best interest for my client. Right. And that's, I think that's priceless.
It is.
It's priceless.
It really is. People down here love the U, right? Yes. That's all.
Who, by the way, are playing today at 7:30.
Right. They play FSU. Yeah, Florida State. Yes. That's a big game.
Yes, I will be watching.
You will? Yeah, that's a big game. And I mean, that culture is still here, but the Orange Blossom Classic brings out a different crowd and a different type of energy,
Actually, no, I went to Florida International, FIU.
Oh,
yes, so most of my family went to FAMU. I stayed home and went to school.
Okay.
And so I always told my dad, because he's a huge Marching 100 fan. So I said, well, you know what? I'll bring the Marching 100 to you.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Since I was the lone one who didn't. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so what drew you to FAMU? I mean, I know you just said your family, but what drew you to really getting involved with the Orange Blossom Classic?
It was the culture. Like I said, what I grew up with. My mom went to Shaw University. My sisters went to FAMU. I have another sister who went to North Carolina Central. And it was just knowing what that culture was like.
Yeah.
And when I started the process at the time in Miami, there was our only HBCU, which is here in Miami, is Florida Memorial.
Right.
And Florida Memorial did not have football at the time. And so I was kind of like, wait, we have homecoming in January around basketball? Like, what is that, right? And so that was really one of those things. Like I said, it was something that I grew up around, and just wanted our kids, this current generation, to experience it.
And so when it comes to, getting involved with the Orange Blossom Classic, right? Did you play any sports growing up? Like, did you have an athletic side to you that people don't know about?
No, I did not play. I was in the band. Right. But I did not play any sports. And I have I'm the mother of two amazing boys who both are into sports. My son actually attends FAMU. He plays for FAMU.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's always nice to see him, during the Orange Blossom Classic, of course.
Right.
But, just growing up with them and being heavily involved, you always want to be involved in what your kids are involved in.
Right.
And so I really, again, from family and then being a boy mom, just jumped into sports. And yeah, here I am.
That athleticism is there, right? So how did your time at FIU, it's diverse there, right? But it's not predominantly Black, right? Correct. How did that kind of like shape your path as far as like what you were going to study? And, when did you first realize you wanted to ultimately be in a role that you're in like today?
Well, I've always, again, coming from a family of entrepreneurs. So even when I was in school, I was really heavily involved in entrepreneurship. I actually went to school for health, which is nothing related to what I'm doing today, right?
That's how it happens sometimes, though.
Exactly. And so just, very young age started, my own business. So I kind of call myself a serial entrepreneur. And then from the business side of it and just kind of merging the business side with the sports side, it was perfect because I didn't necessarily have an experience or have background in sports management or managing event properties, but being able to take my knowledge of business and then, of course, my knowledge of sports and bridging the two is how we got to the revival of the Orange Blossom Classic.
And so, and you got the rights in 2018?
2018.
Okay.
Yes,
what was that moment like for you? Because that was, a big game changer.
Right. But again, in the course of day-to-day activity and just in business, again, that was something I wasn't thinking about. All I knew was that this was going to be a very lengthy process. It was going to be a very tedious process, and it wasn't something that was small. Right. And what I said at the time was, okay, Kendra, if you're going to do all of this work, you just need to make sure that you secure everything that you need to secure. And that's how it came about. I had no idea that, until my PR people pointed it out later on down the line, that was not something that a lot of women or, specifically African-American women, I didn't know.
Right.
And it was just like, okay, just moving along in the course of day-to-day business. And that's how that came about.
Wow. I mean, it almost makes you want to like pinch yourself. Like, is this really happening? You know what I'm saying? And it's actually really inspiring to hear how your personal story led you all the way here. Okay. So when it comes to your most recent feature in Essence, right? Them highlighting you as one of sports' most powerful women, preserving HBCU legacies like the Orange Blossom Classic. What moments from this year, do you think best illustrate the historic pride, that you're championing now?
So our theme this year was built on history fueled by pride. Okay. And as you know, we had Florida A&M University, of course, and Howard University.
Right.
And the Orange Blossom Classic itself just has such rich history. It was in the mid 1930s when the game originally started. It ran until the late 1970s. It was called the Black National Championship. It was what we know today as the Celebration Bowl. And so the history of it was that it was an opportunity for us to showcase ourselves on a big stage when we were not given that opportunity. Right. And of course, then there were so many much of our talent was at HBCUs. And so having those historical moments that are connected to the Orange Blossom Classic and then bringing those moments over to, me as being the director, it's an interesting story. Mm-hmm. There was history when the original classic was started, and there's still history being made today. So I think when you think about the Orange Blossom Classic, it just becomes synonymous with the historical event.
Yes. And we were going to touch on that, right? Oh, okay. the being like the Black National Championship, mm-hmm. So the first game in 1933 mm-hmm. at a Jacksonville ballpark, that was segregation going on back then.
Right. Exactly.
So all the way up until now, mm-hmm. What do you think are some key decisions that kind of help keep it alive up until this point?
So I think those decisions were to just preserve our history. If you think about it, it seems like a long time ago, but it really isn't. And one of the things that, again, timing is everything, and the history of it seems like we're just always making history. So when we brought the game back in 2021, mm-hmm. originally we were supposed to revive the game in 2020, but of course with COVID, mm-hmm. we had to postpone it a year. And so when we came back in 2021, we were with FAMU and Jackson State, of course. Mm-hmm. We were at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement. That was around the time when we had just experienced the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Right. Deion Sanders was making his coaching debut at Jackson State, who of course was one of our teams in the game. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, when Deion Sanders came on board with everything that was going on in the country, everybody was saying, take your talents to HBCUs. Right. And so once again, 2021, we're reviving this historic event around a monumental time. Mm-hmm. And so with, it being that game that was started in 1933 in that Blacks Only ballpark, and then being able to tell that story mm-hmm. at that time in 2021, where, again, we were just at, such a, at that time in our country, once again, it was surreal. The timing of everything was just really
It was almost like some type of alignment. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though it was like in the midst of like, emotional strife, grief, loss, mm-hmm. But it was still like a movement. Exactly. That was happening. And so I think when you have coaches like Deion Sanders in those positions, someone like, himself being a Hall of Famer, mm-hmm. playing multiple sports, mm-hmm. making history as a Black head coach. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think when you have people in place like him, mm-hmm. it's really important for those changes that mm-hmm. you're trying to make with HBCU schools, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say that, at the time when Deion came on, his voice was able to amplify what we always knew, which was that there is talent at HBCUs and that HBCUs are special. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it was unfortunate with what was going on in our country at the time, but it was still a monumental event. We brought the families of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor down to the game, and we had Ben Crump there, who was a part of our parade. And it wasn't a thing of where we were saying, Black Power, we were screaming, but that was a thing. But mm-hmm. we were also, being that we were in Miami and there was such diversity, and it was like a melting pot. So we came up with our tagline at the time, OBC, One Big Community. And that was our way of saying to our partners, our sponsors, our community, that yes, we are supportive of HBCUs. This event is to support HBCUs, but we're also one big community, and we want to make this inclusive, and we want to invite everyone, because that's ultimately what sports does. It brings people together.
Right. And it's not just all about the you. Like, we have to...
Exactly.
We have to keep kind of, reiterating that in Miami, because mm-hmm. that's kind of like, in FSU, and mm-hmm. that's Deion Sanders too, Right. It kind of all connects in a sense.
It does, yeah.
But year,
I believe in having choices. So it's like I said, I'll be watching the Hurricanes today. We have, my son has been, he's at FAMU right now because of, again, my family history. He grew up at the age of 3, he couldn't even pronounce Tallahassee, and he was saying, "Mommy, I want to go to Hassey." So it was one of those things which it was instilled in him. It was embedded in him. But he's still a huge Hurricanes fan. Mm-hmm. So just the other day, he had me pull out all of his Hurricanes jerseys.
Oh my goodness!
Out of his closet, send a picture of it so he could watch the game today. So I think that it's about being informed. You know, knowing both, and then making the most informed decision from there. So you want to know about the University of Miami, but you also want to know about FAMU. Mm-hmm. You want to know about Florida State, but you also want to know about Howard University, and then you make a decision about what fits best for you.
Yeah, and both prestigious schools. I mean, we've had a lot of Black excellence, developed at those institutions,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
But this year, the Orange Blossom Classic featured a vibrant lineup of events. So we had the All-State Career Recruitment Fair, and then we had the Invesco QQQ Career and Sports Entertainment Symposium. Just talk about how these events elevated the classic status this year.
So in addition to a football game, as you know, most classics are a week of events.
Right.
And going back to that one big community tagline, we want to make this inclusive for our fans. We want to have something for everyone in the community. Our All-State Careers career recruitment. So we came up with our tagline at the time, OBC, one big community. And that was our way of saying to our partners, our sponsors, our community that yes, we are supportive of HBCUs. This event is to support HBCUs, but we're also one big community and we want to make this inclusive and we want to invite everyone because that's ultimately what sports does. It brings people together.
Right. And it's not just all about the you. Like we have to
Exactly.
We have to keep kind of, reiterating that in Miami because that's kind of like, I mean, in FSU and I mean, that's Deion Sanders too, you know what I mean?
Right.
It kind of all connects in a sense.
It does, yeah.
But this year,
I believe in having choices. So it's like I said, I'll be watching the Hurricanes today. We have, my son has been, he's at FAMU right now because of, again, my family history. He grew up at the age of 3, he couldn't even pronounce Tallahassee, and he was saying, "Mommy, I want to go to Hassey." So it was one of those things which it was instilled in him. It was embedded in him. But he's still a huge Hurricanes fan. So just the other day, he had me pull out all of his Hurricanes jerseys.
Oh my goodness!
Out of his closet, send a picture of it so he could watch the game today. So I think that it's about being informed. Knowing both, and then making the most informed decision from there. So you want to know about the University of Miami, but you also want to know about FAMU. You want to know about Florida State, but you also want to know about Howard University, and then you make a decision about what fits best for you.
Yeah, and both prestigious schools. I mean, we've had a lot of Black excellence, developed at those institutions, right?
Definitely.
But this year, the Orange Blossom Classic featured a vibrant lineup of events. So we had the All-State Career Recruitment Fair, and then we had the Invesco QQQ Career and Sports Entertainment Symposium. Just talk about how these events elevated the classic status this year.
So in addition to a football game, as you know, most classics are a week of events. And going back to that one big community tagline, we want to make this inclusive for our fans. We want to have something for everyone in the community. Our All-State Careers career recruitment fair is something that's open to everyone of all ages, from college students to adults who are maybe wanting to reimagine what their career looks like. And it's totally free to the public. We have people who, a lot of our sponsors come in, they bring their human resources departments, and they actually interview people on the spot. If you're not ready to interview for a position, we have partnerships with CareerSource, and we have partnerships with other agencies that will actually sit down with you and help you write a resume. And so those are our ways as an event. My thing with the Orange Blossom Classic is wanting to be in the community, wanting to not just make it about football. So that's our way of giving back to the community. And then our Careers and Sports and Entertainment Symposium is a way for college students to learn about life after football, life after basketball. So what's next? How can I be around the sport that I love in another capacity?
And that's something that, as far as off the field, we really stress is like life after, right? What are you doing off the field, right? On the field, you could be putting up as many stats as possible, and making you MVP and all of that. But what you do off the field is a little bit more impactful in ways that can open doors that you could never even imagine, right? So as a Black woman leading a major sports property, you prioritize, like we were just talking about, community impact, right? But how did this year's Orange Blossom Classic drive like economic benefits for South Florida?
So again, wanting to be involved in the community, knowing that we brought this event back in 2021, like I said, just coming off of COVID. We're in Miami where tourism is really, really big for us. That is our largest industry. And we were probably one of those areas that was hit the hardest post-COVID because things were shut down. So we decided to put together, my team and I decided to put together what we call our Business Unite program. And the Business Unite program allows for minority-owned businesses to bid on contracts to help produce the game. So that could be everywhere from barricades, porta potties, catering, beauty and barber services, because we have, you know, entertainers and celebrities who come in for the game, and they're looking for those things. They're looking for someone to do hair. They're looking for someone to do makeup. So there are an array of services that are available through the production of this game, and we thought that that was important to not only help drive economic impact through to our small businesses, but then bringing in out-of-state teams like a Howard University, like a Jackson State, like an Alabama State. We have people that travel in from all over the country, and that brings a huge economic impact into the city because they're staying in hotels, they're eating in our restaurants, they're doing, you know, so many things within the city within a span of 3 or 4 days that makes a huge economic impact, and it helps to provide that financial infusion post-COVID, at a time when our tourism industry was hit the hardest.
Yes, and so when I think about the economic impact, right? Obviously, the mayors were there. You know, city commissioners are there. You know, just speak about their involvement and how, you know, their presence helps as well. You know, Congresswoman Frederica, you know, just having them present there, just talk about how meaningful that is.
So, you know, it goes like both ways. First of all, I am just so grateful to our community, to our elected officials for embracing this. And that is one thing. But when you are looking at, as you mentioned, those individuals from our mayor, our city commissioners, our county commissioners, our U.S. Congresswoman, you know, who I think even with all of the accolades that you mentioned, I think for me, it was just, you know, having her to honestly acknowledge the work that we've done and to present me with the congressional record that weekend. Like that was probably I think the highlight of my weekend. That, and of course seeing my son run out of the tunnel. Having individuals like that who embrace this game, it gives not only credibility to what we're doing, but it allows that next generation that I'm talking about to really see up close and personal what Black excellence looks like. You know, so we had our elected officials. We had Mr. Ron Busby, who is the president of the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. We had, I can't even name, Ben Crump, of course. He launched his company Dream 5 with us that weekend.
I saw
these
that.
are all relationships that have been fostered over the years, and they have said, you know, Kendra, we like what you're doing and we want to lend our support, and we understand that this is so much bigger, again, than just football. And so it allows us to showcase, you know, our Black excellence, and because they've all come out of HBCUs.
And that's the part that's like, wow. And so Wendy Raquel Robinson, right?
Howard University.
You know, keynote speaker, right?
Yes.
You know, and then last year you had Stephen A. Smith. That's not easy.
State University.
You know, so it's not easy to get some of these household names, you know, but when I spoke with Miss Robinson, it was very interesting. It was very funny, kind of, because I brought up the game, you know, the show. And it's like, that still circles back to football in a sense. But her character is really admired in our community.
Listen, I still binge watch the game. And it's been off for like years, but I still everybody loves Tasha Mack. She will, and that's one thing I guess when you play a character so well, you know, it's like, wait, who is Wendy Raquel Robinson? And I have to say Tasha Mack. Tasha Mack.
So it's really awesome, and it gives, like you said, college students a chance to kind of see just what it feels like to be surrounded by so much Black excellence, because you can feel it when you're at these events. So now your inclusion in Ebony's 2025 Power 100 as a sports leader, I have to keep saying that because it's just so amazing, Kendra. But the OBC's growth from 2,000 fans in 1933, like we were talking about at that Jacksonville segregated park, till now, you know, just talk about the numbers and how you kind of envision what would help keep those numbers growing as far as attendance. We were over 22,000 this year.
Well, shout out to my marketing team, first of all, for doing a great job with marketing and getting the word out. But that was actually, so our highest attended game was about 38,000. And that was in 2022. So I am very grateful, you know, for our attendance, but I want us to get back to where we were, which is that 38,000 and bigger. You know, we have to to understand that supporting these events it's important, it's impactful. These dollars go directly to our universities. They go directly to our students and our student athletes by way of scholarships, by way of giving a financial gift to the schools who come in and participate. And it's so important. And our kids, being on a stage like ESPN, playing in an NFL stadium, that's not something that they'll have an opportunity to do every day.
Right.
And I say all the time that when people purchase a ticket, you're a donor. Don't think of a donor as somebody who's writing a check for $5,000 or $50,000 or $500,000.
Right.
Your $30 ticket, you are a donor. You are a contributor. And what I would love to see is the inside of the stadium packed, right? Because you can buy a parking ticket and you can tailgate,
right?
But you don't buy a game ticket. You can buy, you can come into the city and attend all the parties. So we may see 20,000 in the stadium, but see 40,000 in the city.
Right.
And granted, I'm appreciative of that because it helps with the economic impact. But what drives this event and what helps me to support our students, our universities, and our student athletes is packing out that stadium.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, so a little fluctuation there, right, with the numbers, know. But like, what teams do you think will bring in some of those larger numbers? I mean, Howard and FAMU, those are pretty
big teams, yeah.
Household names, powerhouse HBCUs, but there are others out there too,
Yeah,
so what do you have any that's kind of like on your radar?
We do. So we have our agreement with FAM now long term.
To 2030, right?
Correct. Okay. So the Orange Blossom Classic is synonymous with FAMU. It started with FAMU. The original game started with J.R. Lee Jr., who was the son of the athletic director at FAMU back in 1933. So this game began in the office at Florida A&M University. So I cannot see this game without FAMU.
There's no way.
So we will always, our goal is to always bring in opponents that will help to complement that. Opponents who travel well, opponents who have a household name, opponents who are not only just known through their fan base or through their alum, but opponents who are known, even if you've never heard of HBCUs or what it is, chances are you've heard of Howard University, right? Chances are you've heard of Grambling State. There are just certain HBCUs that it's like, you may not know much about HBCU football, but you're like, oh yeah, I know about that FAMU Marching 100, or yeah, I know about those Grambling State Tigers. So we'll look at opponents like that that will have house or universities, and our student athletes is packing out that stadium.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, so a little fluctuation there, right, with the numbers, know. But like, what teams do you think will bring in some of those larger numbers? I mean, Howard and FAMU, those are pretty
big teams, yeah.
Household names, powerhouse HBCUs, but there are others out there too,
Yeah,
so what do you have any that's kind of like on your radar?
We do. So we have our agreement with FAM now long term.
To 2030, right?
Correct. Okay. So the Orange Blossom Classic is synonymous with FAMU. It started with FAMU. The original game started with J.R. Lee Jr., who was the son of the athletic director at FAMU back in 1933. So this game began in the office at Florida A&M University. So I cannot see this game without FAMU.
There's no way.
So we will always, our goal is to always bring in opponents that will help to complement that. Opponents who travel well, opponents who have a household name, opponents who are not only just known through their fan base or through their alum, but opponents who are known, even if you've never heard of HBCUs or what it is, chances are you've heard of Howard University, right? Chances are you've heard of Grambling State. There are just certain HBCUs that it's like, you may not know much about HBCU football, but you're like, oh yeah, I know about that FAMU Marching 100, or yeah, I know about those Grambling State Tigers. So we'll look at opponents like that that will have household names and opponents that will travel. It's always important also you want an opponent that's doing well, because you want a good matchup on the field also. So we look at, even last year when we had Alabama State and North Carolina Central, that was the first time in the history of the game that FAMU had not been a part of the game. But those two teams were selected based on their standings within their conference. So at the time last year, Alabama State was predicted to be at the top of their conference. North Carolina Central, same thing. They were predicted to be at the top of the MEAC. So we look at where their standings are, and of course, anything can change.
Right.
But we typically look at where they stand within their conference and what's going to be a good showing on the field.
Yeah, and I think the Marching 100 it's world renowned. I would say so. And
yes.
I think that a lot of people look forward to that halftime show. I think that is unmatched. Now, granted, Howard, they have a band, Beautiful,
the Showtime.
Yes. But
the Marching 100 is the Marching 100.
There's slightly a difference.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
But I think it's all love. And I think that's part of the culture, just being in that environment. When the band gets up, it makes you want to get up, right?
Yeah. I always say, if you don't know what happened on the field, they'll say, well, I don't know who won the game, but I can tell you who won the halftime show. So,
right. Now, and this year, Howard won. Okay, one point, right?
Yes.
I feel like FAMU was favored to win.
They were
in this game. I feel like there were a lot of doubters for Howard.
Yes.
Unfortunately, but they fought to the end.
They did.
So 0-0, and they won by 1 point.
So, a
43-yard field goal. Yeah, and so. Right. The fact that both coaches are Florida natives, right?
Yes.
Larry Scott and James Colsey III. Yes. It's such
Colsey is a Miami native.
Miami native too, right?
Yes.
But we're not going to go all the way into his history because he also has some attachments to the Ohio State University. But we're going to leave it with down here, okay? But, just talk about how meaningful that is because it's like a full circle moment, But it's two head coaches, two black head coaches trying to, keep these programs up to par, okay? But having them at the game competing against one another this year, what was that like? How did that make you feel?
I was really excited about our coaches.
Yeah.
So Coach Scott he of course used to coach at the University of Miami. He was actually an interim head coach at the University of Miami for I think it was during the Al Golden era. And so having him, of course, USF, and having ties with Howard, having ties with PWIs as well as HBCUs, as both of them do. Colsey being a Florida State alum, and it was one of those things where it was big for us because now to have them at the helm of two HBCUs, but of course being from larger programs,
right.
But at the same time, also, like you said, having those Florida ties from a personal standpoint, not just their coaching history, but where they are from, where they were born, where they grew up. So Coach Scott, being from Sebring, Florida, and this area is so important to both of them because it's a large recruiting base.
Yes.
And so to be able to have two coaches that can speak to what it's like, being in Florida, being able to bring in potential recruits to say to them, hey, I grew up right down the street from where you grew up, and I'm here and I'm now coaching at this particular institution, and you can do that too. It's just, again, it's about representation. So having them to be able to represent Florida, to be able to represent two amazing HBCUs, and to do it with their coaching pedigree and with their coaching backgrounds, it was a great story. Story.
Now, a lot of people compare the Orange Blossom Classic to like the Florida Classic. Just talk about some of the major differences between the two.
So what I say is, first of all, it's all FAMU. So the Florida Classic, we have a very good working relationship. They actually, we did some co-promotions this year with FIU.
Okay.
Because that Friday, FIU played Bethune-Cookman University.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
And FIU's new head coach is the former head coach at FAMU.
Willie Simmons.
Right. So we actually all of us did some co-promotions together. So Florida Classic, they were with us at the FIU Cookman game on Friday night. Okay. Originally, the game was going to be on the same day. Right. And we worked with FIU Athletics to get the game moved to the Friday before our game.
Okay.
And so we did some promotions where we encouraged people to go to the FIU Cookman game and then also come over to the FAMU game on Saturday to our game. And so Florida Classic came in because, of course, the Florida Classic is Bethune-Cookman and FAMU. So they came in on Friday night and they did some promotions in order to sell tickets for the Florida Classic. So again, we're all one big family.
Right.
But I think the difference between the two is naturally the Florida Classic is tradition, right?
Okay.
It's been around for 60 years, and to the point where people don't even say the Florida Classic, they say the Classic.
Right, the Classic. We're going to the Classic.
Exactly. We're just going to the Classic. So when they say that, you know what they're talking about. But I think what I kind of call us, we're like the bougie bowl.
Okay.
Right? So we don't necessarily have that recent tradition. We have the history of the original Orange Blossom Classic.
Right.
But chances are you're not going to get the Congresswoman Frederica Wilson and, Attorney Benjamin Crump and like you said, Stephen A. Smith and all of these people in the same room. We had all 9 of the Divine 9 presidents with us for that weekend.
Yes.
Right.
That was amazing. So Kendra, as far as the significant scholarship support for HBCU students, right? Not just FAMU and Howard, but can you share a story from this year that kind of shows how these funds are shaping HBCU students' futures and how future team selections tie into expanding the impact?
So, like we said, when you're selecting teams, you want to make sure that you are selecting teams that are going to be a draw. Because, of course, the more people we can get into the stadium, then the more tickets we sell and the more we're able to assist. Also, with our corporate partners, many of our corporate partners also have foundations.
Right.
And so in addition to us being able to put a brand out on the field or, be able to showcase their brand, they also will say, hey, well, our foundation would like to contribute to your scholarship fund. Right. So those are the ways that we're able to raise scholarship dollars and we're able to give back to students. We have, some that are specifically earmarked for certain things.
Okay.
So to give you an example, I think it's AvMed, right? They may say, well, you know what, we'd like to give a scholarship donation to student athletes who have unpaid medical bills. Or someone will say, we'd like to give a scholarship donation to a student that's specifically majoring in sports management. So there are certain dollars that are earmarked for specific things, but then there are other dollars that are able to go to high school students or students who are not majoring in anything specific. So then we put those into our general scholarship fund. And I am a firm believer in being a well-rounded student.
Yes.
I think there is so many dollars available to the students with the 4.5 GPA, with the,
It really is, because that's just, it's great, but that requires a certain level of discipline, and just time. I mean, that's that's not your average GPA for students.
That's well-rounded and that may have a life outside not for everybody. So we will take that 3.0 or even 2.5 that is in dance, or a 2.5 or a 3.0 that's in football or in basketball. So if you're in an extracurricular activity, whether it be student government, if it's some sort of extracurricular activity, and you have a 2.5 or a 3.0 GPA, then we're able to give scholarships. And one of the stories I think that sticks out to me the most is a young lady who said to me that she had the opportunity to enjoy her college career and not have to worry about working and not have to worry about things like books, or it took a lot of pressure off of her, where she was able to really enjoy the full experience of her college life. And those are the things that we want, because these are years that you don't get back. I tell my son all the time, enjoy it now.
It goes by fast.
Right. You have the rest of your life to work. Like you don't have to figure it out all today. And that's what those scholarship dollars are earmarked for students who can be well-rounded, enjoy their college career, and a lot of the pressure is taken off of them in areas that they otherwise would not be able to deal with.
Right. She's going to forever remember that. You know what I'm saying? Yes. So she's going to remember that moment. She's going to forever be grateful for that, especially when it comes to student loans. But looking forward, how do you plan to select teams for future classics to maximize these contributions? Perhaps by, highlighting some of the underrepresented HBCUs, the ones that not everybody knows, or powerhouse programs. But, how do you kind of plan to select the future teams and, you're being recognized right now for such your powerful leadership, you know. So all these elements embody that, you know. So how would you plan to select that?
So we'll always select the teams that we know are going to bring a good fan base,
Right.
who are going to, again, have a good showing on the field. But we will bring in those smaller institutions who may not necessarily do that, but are still HBCUs. And like you said, they're not as well known, but we still need to know them.
Right.
And so Florida Memorial, for example, right?
Yeah.
They are an NAIA school, but they're right in our backyard. So we host our career fair and we host our symposium on the campus of Florida Memorial,
I see.
and we bring it to their students. So we'll find ways like that,
Okay.
you know, like this past year with having Bethune-Cookman in town with FIU and Cookman. So, you know, we had a discount code for people from Cookman who wanted to purchase tickets to encourage them to come to the game.
Yeah, because Bethune is struggling right now.
Right,
You know,
right,
financially.
right.
So that was smart. That was a really good idea.
Yeah. So we'll, you know, look for those creative ways to bring in other institutions. You know, we're looking at right now all of the institutions who do not have football programs.
Okay.
To say, hey, and I think the one that has been with us for the last couple of years, I think it is, oh my gosh, I can't think of it right offhand.
And there's so many HBCUs
Yeah, I can't
to remember.
think of it.
There's
Yeah.
people don't know how many there really are, but there's
Right,
hundreds.
Right,
Yeah.
But we have a couple who don't have football programs that actually come and join us for the weekend.
Okay.
And so we'll continue to look at that, and we'll, you know, recognize them. We will, you know, we have had a partnership this year with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, so they always shout out all of our HBCUs. So we'll, you know, have certain type of opponents on the field, but we'll still make sure that all of our HBCUs in some way, shape, or form are represented throughout the Classic.
That is all for this episode of Off the Field. A huge thank you to Ms. Kendra Bulluck-Major for joining us. You know, I was looking forward to this because, you know, you being in your role as executive director of the Orange Blossom Classic, recently being honored in Essence and Ebony, those are two very important, you know, milestones for our culture. You know, Ebony and Essence, that's a big thing, and you have to be celebrated.
Yes,
Kendra, you're doing amazing things, you know.
Thank
so
you.
I'm so glad that you can join me.
Thank you.
And keep tuning in, guys, for more stories that shine beyond the game, because, you know, it's not just about your impact on the field, but off the field as well. So until next time, stay passionate and stay connected.